Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
Hey everyone, I got a great one for you from yesterday. Half of my co-workers got stuck at a conference because of the hurricane, so the rest of us have been working ridiculous shifts to cover. Don't mind the overtime, and it couldn't be helped, so it is what it is. Yesterday I worked 12 hours. After having worked 12 the 2 days before, and knowing I'd have another 12 today, last one, yay. I was tired, which is why I did what I did in this story. I changed out of my work shirt before I left the building, so I was wearing jeans and a tie-dye t-shirt when I walked like a zombie into a fast food place to get something to eat. I get my food and kind of tuck myself into a corner to eat. At one point I hear a bit of commotion, but ignore it. As I get up and throw out my trash, I hear an old man say that I should be fired. I look behind me. No one. Oh man, he's definitely pointing at me. He starts yelling about when he was here yesterday and how rude the cashier was and how I messed his order up. I'm half awake and just confused, looking at the manager like what? And he gives me the scared, apologetic, I have no idea look. Old guy still ranting when the manager says to him that he'd love to help him get this fixed, but I don't work here. The manager told him he can help figure out who it was, but it wasn't me. And as this sub always goes, old guy didn't listen. He said he knows it was me and won't forget that nasty face. Now I'm awake and getting angrier. I told him he apparently did because I seriously don't work here and never have. Dude is not worth my time. I give the manager a have fun with this look and start towards the door. This jerk threw a chair at me. A chair! It didn't hit me, but he sure did try. It got a bit fuzzy with everything going on at once, but the manager grabbed him up so fast in a bear hug and walked toward the door saying that he's out of here and if he comes back again, he's calling the cops. He added, that's if I don't do so first for him trying to assault me with a chair. Old guy said something about how I turned my back to him and to let him go. Manager responded that's not how this works. Like I said, it was fast and I was still a bit out of it. Props on the manager, by the way. He got that crazy away from me, his actual employees and the other customers, including a few children, in a matter of seconds. He pushed him out, still screaming, and held the door shut. He offered me all the free food in the world and told me he'd happily help me press charges. Had he left, I honestly might not have, but he was still yelling and banging on the door, so we basically had to just to get him to leave. So we call the cops to remove him. While we're waiting, the manager mentions the cameras, sends back someone to pull it up so the cops can see it. Cops get there, get the old guy in cuffs and start asking what happened. Old guy lied, saying I threw the chair and the manager assaulted him and lied about being my boss. It was so easy to prove otherwise with the cameras. So he's in jail now for a list of charges. After one cop leaves with the old guy, another stays to get statements and all that. For a giggle, they also looked to try to figure out which cashier was apparently so horrible. There were only guys working the entire day. They couldn't even find the old guy. We're sure he never came in. As I was finally leaving, the cop looks at me and innocently asks if I'm sure I don't work here. I don't know why, but I lost it and kept laughing. I asked if he wanted me to show him how to teach a chair to fly, and he also lost his and started laughing. Many people have mentioned this. Sounds like the man has Alzheimer's or dementia. This morning I found his mugshot, which helped me find other times he's been in jail. Over the past 20 years, records aren't updated to show anything before that. He's been charged for assault 4 times, trespassing 2 times, a random DUI, and resisting arrest 6 times. So of the 7 arrests, he resisted all but 1. What I'm saying is, this guy just seems like a jerk. I worked at a seafood restaurant in Kennebunkport, Maine for several summers. If you've never been, Kennebunkport is a coastal town that changes from quiet in winter to busy with tourists in summer. What makes this town special is that it's the summer home for a well-known political family who owns a compound on a small peninsula at the northern end of town. Our restaurant belonged to a company that owned several places in the area. We were known for seafood, especially oysters, which were a favorite of our distinguished visitor, a former president. Whenever he visited, we'd give him free oysters, and sometimes his staff would order food to be delivered to the compound. This day was quiet. It was mid-afternoon between lunch and dinner, when restaurants are mostly empty. I was behind the bar, wiping down the counter and looking through our large fish tank that separated the bar from the entrance. The tank was a key feature. You could see the front door through water and fish. While cleaning, I noticed a woman walking across our driveway. She wore business casual clothes, pencil skirt, blazer, hair in a tight bun. Before entering, she straightened her skirt and put on a serious expression. I put my cleaning supplies under the bar and got ready to greet her. When she entered, I asked if I could help her. She demanded to know if the order was ready, speaking like I should have known who she was. I told her I didn't know about any order but would check with the kitchen and ask for her name. This seemed to offend her. She looked surprised that I didn't recognize her, calling it embarrassing. She told me she was picking up oysters and clams for the former president's compound. This wasn't completely unusual. We did send food there sometimes, but something felt wrong. Usually, staff came in official vehicles and were familiar faces, not walking in like this woman. When I tried to explain I needed to check the order, she wouldn't let me speak. She threatened to get me fired and asked if our service was always this bad. She kept talking about who she represented, getting louder. During her speech, a man in a dark suit came from the dining room, probably hearing the noise. The woman saw him and thought he was management. She told him to come over, using the same attitude she had with me. She started complaining to him, but he stopped her after about 10 seconds. He asked her to come to the back dining area to fix the problem, starting to explain he didn't work there. When she went into the back area, she stopped moving. At our best table sat the former president with his family and guests having lunch. Around the room were Secret Service agents, including the suited man she had just ordered around. Her face went pale. You could see when she realized she was caught. She tried to run but was wearing high heels not made for escaping. She stumbled, hit her head on our glass door, then staggered across the driveway like a baby deer learning to walk. The Secret Service didn't chase her. They just asked for our security video before leaving. My bosses later told me the woman was caught by the sheriff within hours. She turned out to be a cashier from Walmart in Wells, a town up the coast. She had no connection to the president or his staff. She heard he ate at our restaurant and thought she could get free seafood by pretending to be from his team. Months later, she was charged with attempted fraud. Pretending to work for a former president to get free food is taken seriously. She lost her Walmart job and got a fine. The president and his family found it funny once they understood what happened. They kept dining with us throughout that summer and afterward. I think about that woman sometimes. Her boldness in trying such a trick. The image of her stumbling in those heels after being caught still makes me laugh years later. This incident took place in India in the early 90s. I had completed my schooling at the local institution, where my sister was still studying. We were quite familiar with most of the teachers since they lived in our neighborhood. My father, a quiet and dignified man, had taught us to respect our elders and teachers. When I graduated in 1989, there was a change in the school administration. The principal had retired, and the vice principal had taken over as a new principal. This vice principal had always harbored some grudge against my father. During local gatherings, he would try to belittle my father, making snide remarks or dismissive comments. My father would usually ignore these attempts at provocation, believing that engaging with such behavior was unproductive. When my sister and I had joined the school years earlier, my father had paid a refundable deposit of 5,000 rupees for each of us. This deposit was supposed to be returned when we graduated. In the 90s, 10,000 rupees was a significant amount, equivalent to about 95,000 rupees today. For a middle-class family like ours, it was not a sum to be taken lightly. After my graduation, when my father asked about the refund of my deposit, the vice principal told him that since my sister would be graduating the following year, both deposits would be returned together. My father agreed, thinking it was a reasonable arrangement. When my sister finally graduated, my father approached the school administration regarding the refund of both deposits. Days passed without any response. After 2 weeks of silence, my father decided to visit the school personally. The moment my father brought up the subject of the deposits, the vice principal's demeanor changed. His face showed contempt. The vice principal questioned what deposits my father was referring to and said that the school couldn't refund any deposits at that time. My father tried explaining that there was an agreement that the money was meant to be refundable upon graduation and that both his children had now graduated. The vice principal denied any such agreement existed, claiming the school had used that money for development purposes. My father attempted to reason with him, mentioning that the deposit was explicitly marked as refundable and that other parents had received their refunds. He asked the vice principal to check the school records, insisting the deposits were clearly labeled as refundable when he paid them. The vice principal's voice grew louder. He rudely told my father that he didn't need to check anything and said they couldn't refund the money. The argument became increasingly heated. Other staff members began to gather around, watching as their new principal lost his composure. When my father insisted this wasn't right and that the money belonged to our family as it was only a deposit, the vice principal made a shocking statement. He flatly refused to return the deposits and challenged my father to take the school to court if he wanted. My father fell silent. Without another word, he got up and left the school premises. When he came home, he didn't rant or show anger. Instead, he explained the situation to my mother. He told her about the vice principal's refusal to return our deposits and mentioned that he was dared to take them to court. My mother expressed outrage at this behavior and noted that we needed that money. My father asked if she still had the receipts from when we paid the deposits. My mother had always been organized when it came to documents. She kept every receipt, bill, and stub filed away. She went to her cabinet and pulled out a folder labeled School Documents. She showed him both receipts, which clearly stated refundable deposit with the school seal and signature. My father studied the receipts carefully and then picked up the phone. He called his friend who was a lawyer. He explained that he needed advice because the school was refusing to refund our deposits despite having clear documentation. After explaining the situation, the lawyer agreed to help. My father also reached out to other parents whose children attended the same school, telling them about what had happened. The lawyer filed a case against the school. In court, the school's representatives couldn't provide any valid reason for withholding the deposits. The vice principal's personal vendetta against my father became apparent when he couldn't justify the school's actions with any legitimate policy. The judge ruled in my father's favor. The school was ordered to refund both deposits with interest and also cover the court expenses. It was a clear victory, but my father didn't gloat. The aftermath was significant. My father's friends, who were part of the Parent-Teacher Association, raised the issue during the next meeting. The school's trustee board was forced to address the situation. One PTA member spoke up saying this kind of behavior was unacceptable and that parents trust the school with their children and their money. They emphasized that such trust cannot be broken due to personal grudges. The trustee board issued guidelines ensuring that all deposits would be refunded promptly upon graduation. The vice principal received a warning about bringing personal issues into school matters. Other parents who had forgotten about their deposits or had been similarly turned away began claiming their refunds. The school had to pay back a substantial amount of money, far more than just our 10,000 rupees. The vice principal's attempt to settle a personal score with my father had backfired. He not only had to return our money, but also faced embarrassment in front of the school board and the community. My father never mentioned the incident again. He had stood up for what was right without resorting to the vice principal's level of pettiness. In doing so, he had not only recovered our family's money, but had also helped other families claim what was rightfully theirs. Let me set the scene. I'd just moved into my new apartment after landing a promotion that required relocating. The building seemed perfect. Good location, decent rent, and what appeared to be a quiet community. I work in software development, which means I need to be sharp and focused during the workday. My job requires concentration and problem-solving skills that don't mix well with sleep deprivation. For the first week, everything was peaceful. Then the neighbors moved in next door. At first, I tried to be understanding. Moving is stressful, and maybe they were just celebrating their new place. But one night turned into two, then three, then it became clear this wasn't a temporary situation. This was their lifestyle. The walls in our building aren't paper thin, but they certainly aren't soundproof either. Their bass-heavy music would vibrate through the shared wall, and their guests would have conversations at volumes that suggested they thought everyone within a 3-block radius was invited to participate. What made it worse was that they ignored the building's quiet hours policy. Where I live, there are resting times between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. on weekdays when residents are expected to keep noise to a reasonable level. Not silent, just considerate. After 2 weeks of interrupted sleep and increasing frustration, I decided to take the mature approach. On a Tuesday night around 11 p.m. when their music was loud and I had an important presentation the next morning, I walked over and knocked on their door. A guy with bloodshot eyes opened it, the music blaring behind him. I told myself as their neighbor and asked if they could turn down their music a bit, since I had work early the next morning. His response was dismissive, asking why that should be their problem. I explained that, besides basic neighborly courtesy, it was against building policy to play loud music after 10 p.m. on weekdays. I made it clear I wasn't asking them to end their gathering, just to lower the volume. The guy looked at me like I'd said something ridiculous. He asked if I was going to call the police over some music, saying that wouldn't be very neighborly either. He suggested we should all mind our own business and stick to our own apartments. Then he closed the door in my face. I stood there for a moment, processing what had just happened. Had he really just told me to mind my own business when their noise was invading my space? Their party continued until around 2 a.m. I managed maybe 4 hours of broken sleep before my alarm went off. When I dragged myself out of bed, an idea formed. I called my supervisor and requested to work from home that day. I claimed I wasn't feeling well, and he was understanding. I rarely asked for accommodations. At exactly 6:01 a.m., when quiet hours ended and knowing my other neighbor had already left for work, I positioned my entertainment system. I own an 800-watt speaker setup with a powerful subwoofer that I normally use at reasonable volumes. Today would be different. I turned the subwoofer so it faced directly at the wall shared with their bedroom. I maximized every setting: volume, bass boost, treble, all cranked to levels I'd never tried before. The system warned me about potential damage, which I ignored. Then I scrolled to my hardstyle and dubstep playlists. As a fan of electronic music, the intense varieties like hardstyle, techno, and psytrance, I had plenty of tracks with earth-shaking bass drops and aggressive beats. I hit play on a hardstyle track, then quickly inserted my earplugs because even I couldn't handle the volume I'd set. The walls started vibrating. My coffee mug danced across the table. I could feel the floor trembling beneath my feet. 15 minutes into my morning concert, my phone told me someone was at the door. I removed one earplug and opened up, keeping the music blasting. There stood my neighbors, looking terrible. The woman's hair was a mess, and the guy had dark circles under his bloodshot eyes. Both were still in their pajamas and smelled of alcohol. They demanded that I turn down the music, asking what was wrong with me. I threw their own words back at them, asking if they were getting angry over a little music and suggesting that wasn't very neighborly. I reminded them of their own advice about sticking to their apartment. Then I slammed the door and disabled my doorbell. For the next hour, I played the most aggressive dubstep, techno, and death metal in my collection. Every bass drop felt like justice. After I felt my point had been made, I turned off my system and walked directly to their apartment. I rang their doorbell repeatedly until a disheveled and angry-looking guy opened up. I asked if we could agree to peace and respect the resting times between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. during the week. After staring at me for a long moment, he nodded. I wished him a good night's sleep and left. Since then, their music has stayed at a reasonable volume during the week, and they wrap up their gatherings by 10 p.m. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.